Today on CityCast Chicago, exactly how close are we to a permanent leader of Chicago public schools? Have you checked out Chicago Reader's Best of 2025? And who doesn't love a good old-fashioned yard sale? I got two that you don't want to miss this weekend. It's Friday, March 6th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. I'm joined by two amazing individuals today from Chalk Beach, Chicago. Rima Amin, how you feeling this morning?
Good to be with you.
Hey, we appreciate you making time. We've also got the Chicago Readers, Devin Marshall Brown, in the building. How you doing today?
I'm good. Good morning.
Hey, I appreciate y'all being here. Every single Friday, we love to bring in these amazing voices from across the city to look back on some of the biggest stories happening this week. If this is your first episode of the podcast this week, you missing out. Executive producer Simone Alisea was featured in the last 3 episodes, and we kicked off Monday with our homie Paige Serena and our newsletter editor Emmy Mack to give you our guide to March. All of these episodes are worth your attention and your time. So if you got a little bit more, please go ahead and give us a little bit of it. We are going to jump right into the stories today. Earlier this week, we covered ongoing financial troubles at the charter network Aspira. Rima, jump in here, because when we talked about it on Tuesday, it seemed that everything had been sort of set in stone, that the school wouldn't make it through the end of the semester, that CPS needed to jump in to start helping families and staff members transition. Has anything changed this week?
So as far as I know, officially, things haven't quite changed. And of course, Aspira, the charter network, has continued to, the latest I know is they've continued to assert that they are still trying to raise money. I think there's a GoFundMe online for the charter network, which is super unprecedented, at least here in Chicago. And so, they have tried to signal to the community that they are trying really hard and there's a chance they could make it through the rest of the school year. But CPS, while saying students can stay there if they want, has sort of started the beginnings of this transition process. That is the latest I've heard. I heard from a source that Aspira may start laying staff off, but I want to be totally clear that that's from one source. I haven't been able to confirm it, but I think that does speak to the kind of like continued fluid nature of not knowing exactly what's going on at these high schools.
100%. I mean, you talk about the school opening to GoFundMe. That's when the American healthcare system fails you, right? That's when you can't find housing. But the idea that your school shut down and your school hopped on GoFundMe, I mean, when you hear from staff members, families, I've talked to you a few times over the years when a school is facing this kind of trouble and uncertainty. Will CPS step in? Will they not? What are you hearing from families and staff members as this news has both rolled out and now they sort of sit and wait in some cases?
I think these staff members and families and students have been through a lot over just the course of this school year, because, I mean, if you take a step back, Aspira, which is a charter network and one of many in Chicago, it closed a middle school last year, and it's not the only charter school network that is facing financial trouble and is considering closings. And so if you're going to one of these schools, there's I think in the past year, it's fair to say there's that uncertainty in the back of your mind. And then CPS says this, in the fall, that they are gravely concerned about Aspira's financial sustainability and whether it will make it through the rest of the school year. Meanwhile, staff and families are saying, we didn't know anything about this. Like, what are you talking about, essentially, right? And so it's been this roller coaster for them. And there was a Chicago Board of Education meeting last week, and tons of students, current staff at these high schools that may face closure came and spoke directly to the board. And there were a lot of emotions. There were kids, too, who are seniors this year, and they don't know if their credits will transfer to CPS-run schools, or rather district-run schools. They don't know what colleges are going to think of them, if they're switching and their transcripts reflect that towards the latter half of the year. CPS has said that it will do everything in its power to support these kids, including reaching out to college admissions offices. But I think that level of uncertainty still exists. And I will say, I talked really briefly to a teacher at one of Aspira's alternative high schools. And this teacher has a sister whose child goes to one of the schools that might close. They're just facing a ton of, I think they're just facing a ton of uncertainty and are trying to figure out next steps.
Yeah. I mean, no school system has been spared for closings in the last few years, decades. I went to a Black Catholic school on the South Side. It felt like every year, everyone in our school community was waiting to see if we'd be on the list of schools being shuttered. And in fact, I was at a school that was shuttered when I was in the 5th grade. We know that CPS has been under a moratorium after the historic slate of schools closed, 13 years ago. But Rima, we've been sitting here having this conversation about a few charter networks. As you've pointed out, we've talked about Acero, right? CPS had to step in to save Shy Arts at one point. Is this a trend right now? Why are the city's charter networks seemingly at this moment where a few are in this financial do or die situation?
My colleague and I wrote about this a few weeks ago because we are seeing increasingly networks and schools face closure, face financial trouble. And we found that there are a few reasons for this. One of them is that a problem that the district is facing too, which is declining enrollment in these schools. And unlike CPS schools, funding for charters is directly based on how many kids attend their schools. And so if, as you lose kids, you're losing money. Now, the charters have asserted that they are actually not getting as much cash to spend as the state allows them to get. There is some debate about this, but CPS has essentially agreed that that is the case, according to a confidential memo that we got. And, the charter networks and their advocates will point to that as the main reason that they're getting shortchanged funding. But, other costs have also gone up, costs of healthcare, salary costs. A lot of these charter schools are unionized, just like district schools. And when you unionize, you're trying to make wages the same as, or you're trying to raise wages, right? That's part of unionizing. That's part of building a strong contract. And, charter network heads will point to that. There are others and critics of the charter networks that say that there are financial missteps happening on the charter network level, that, they're over projecting enrollment and they're basing their budgets on a bunch of kids who actually don't end up showing up on the first day of school, for example. And there are questions about how much oversight is CPS actually exercising over these schools? Are they looking hard enough at their bank accounts, at their financial audits? Are they probing them enough to know and to be certain that before they extend contracts with these schools, are they going to be financially solvent for the next 2-3 years, 4 or 5 years? So that you don't face an Aspira situation where you might close your school in the middle of the year. So that's a lot, but there do seem to be a lot of contributing reasons to this. The last one I'll say is CPS also has a budget problem. It's had a structural deficit forever, and it's also experiencing declining enrollment. But the difference is that not only is the funding model for schools different at CPS, it's also at a much larger scale. So if you have a school that has very few kids and you can't resource well for whatever reason, the scale is huge.
You don't have a lot of room to shift around resources, shift around people. Yeah,
there's a little cushion. But if you're a single site charter, you're an Aspira where you have 2 main high schools, that's much harder to scale up and figure out and find a cushion.
Access Contemporary Music's Sound of Silent Film Festival is now in its 21st year. And I already know what you're thinking. Kobe, this an audio medium, and that sound a bit like an oxymoron. Doesn't a silent film festival just sound like this? But here's the thing. This festival features newly composed musical scores performed live, so it's movies and a concert. These silent films were selected from more than 100 submissions to an international call, and they span comedy, drama, experimental, and beyond. Plus, they short. Each one is only about 2 to 15 minutes long. And to top it all off, the festival is at none other than the Music Box Theater, one of my favorite spots in the city and a beautiful setting for this kind of event. The Sound of Silent Film Festival is happening Wednesday, April 8th at 7:30 p.m. Tickets are available at acmusic.org.
Hi, I'm David Plotz. I'm the CEO of CityCast, a podcast network that includes this show you're listening to, and also 12 other CityCasts in 12 other cities. And each one knows their city as well as your local team knows yours. So isn't it time we connected them? Don't you want to know how they're tackling their bike lane problems and housing challenges and sidewalk dog poop crises? That's why I'm hosting a new podcast called Your City Could Be Better. Because it could be. Every week, I'll chat with a different host in our CityCast network about what their cities are doing right and wrong, the weird things they're trying, and the surprising successes, so that we can all learn how to make our cities a little bit better. Listen to Your City Could Be Better on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
From one network of schools to Illinois' entire university system, Devin Marshall, you have been writing about the rollback of DEI programs and initiatives, of course, diversity, equity, inclusion. And they've taken different forms depending on what university or what university system you're looking at. How has that been going down in the U of I system?
So over at the U of I system, who was the first to get us kicked off in the DEI rollback in early fall, they decided to end all scholarship, hiring, funding, and admissions practices meant to increase enrollment and participation from Black, Latina, LGBTQ students, women students.
Do these funds still exist that students can access, but they've changed the name of it from like a Black Excellence Scholarship to like a Excellence Scholarship that they on the back end sort of make sure gets to Black students? Or have these things just sort of disappeared from being able to, has this funding just sort of disappeared entirely?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both. So first, donors are not, if a donor has the name like, hey, this is for women in engineering, I'm giving this money, the money can't be accepted at all. So it's on the donor to change how they label the money that's coming in. And then the funding that they have is still there, but a lot of the student organizations or support systems, they're confused about what this looks like in practice. They just know it has suddenly become it goes against the rules. A good example is the DuSable Scholars Program. It's a Black STEM support program, had its first cohort in 2021. What they do is they realized that a lot of Black STEM students at UIC over the past few decades were not graduating on time. One of the issues was students need community and mentorship that look like them. And second of all, some of these students had to leave because they were working other jobs. And they said, okay, so we also need financial support for Black students. Now they're in like their fourth or fifth cohort. And if you go on the DuSable Scholars website, you don't see it's for Black scholars or Black STEM students anymore. The DuSable students have expressed concern about the viability of their program moving forward, but they don't know what it'll look like. The faculty director of the program has said, we don't plan to go anywhere, but it seems everyone's trying to kind of I imagine the rule changes as like, if you think of like a spy movie and you have all those red lasers coming through and they're trying to tiptoe around without getting caught by one. That's what I imagine the kind of gymnastics that's happening now.
Yeah, it's like Homer backing into the bushes. And that's why I asked my initial question, because I'm wondering, right, we've talked on the show about the pressure university systems are facing from the federal government. The idea of losing hundreds of millions of dollars in funding is scaring the hell out of people. The idea that people are being fired from their job or being forced to resign from their positions, scaring the hell out of people. So I wondered if they are simply eliminating the language, but then advising administrators and staff to still take those intended missions an account, but I also wonder, does that open up the school to legal trouble? For example, if the DuSable scholarship is no longer stated as a Black STEM scholarship and is open to students, but their next cohort represents a group of Black engineering students, does that now put them in a precarious legal situation where students could go, hey, this is no longer for Black students primarily. Why are there no other students? So I'm wondering, like, how far are these changes going? Are they simply cosmetic on the websites?
I think there's two things you can take out of it. When it comes to the actual, like the DuSable Scholars Program, there's a tribal nation tuition award. When you come to those specific race-based or ethnicity or gender-based scholarships, those are more of a question mark. They haven't been awarded yet for the next generation, the next class to come into U of I. But when it comes to who is teaching, previously in order to get promoted, this was put into place around 2021, 2022. In order to get promoted, one huge piece of that was how diverse and accessible your curricula were. It was a key component of whether or not you were able to become a full-time professor, get tenured, or if you were going to have to leave. And a lot of scholars decided to go to the University of Illinois because, well, first of all, as a state school, it has a range and an access to a cross-section of students that you don't get at elite universities. There's a long history of professors there doing progressive work, and so they want to join that charge. So they come and they say, hey, I want to look at how this section of the medical industry affects Black patients. Now they can't name that in their coursework or in the work that they want to study. They're no longer able to promote these catered or these more specific areas of study in order to be considered for promotion. And some of these things require that, especially if you look at, somebody wants to study perhaps AIDS and HIV, but now they're no longer able to look at how it affects Black and brown men specifically, or the school will not consider their research. So through this process and through the switched lens that the university has, now the types of work that will support those types of students, that will support marginalized communities, is no longer seen as valued. And it makes more sense to remove it from your curriculum, or remove it from your study, or for whatever you present in order to be promoted, because you need a job.
Have you heard from students and faculty members on what it's been like to experience, in some ways, just how quickly these university systems have folded, right? I stated all of the pressure they face, but the idea that they succumb to that pressure and the harm that it has done to so many students. How are people reacting to this?
They're not reacting well. We see the same thing over at Northwestern after Trump put a $790 million funding freeze on their research for 4 to 5 months. And they decided, you know what? Fine, you can make a home in our student affairs office, and we'll pay you $75 million over 3 years to get our funding back. We will discontinue scholarship on educational programs based on race or ethnicity. We'll report to the U.S. Attorney General all complaints, investigations, and decisions related to supposed anti-Semitism on campus as false allegations of anti-Semitism.
And just anti-Semitism, not racism, not homophobia or transphobia, not Muslim aggression. No, just specifically.
These documents say anti-Semitism, entire sections just about anti-Semitism. And students and professors are both at both school, university systems, whatever. They're both kind of reeling as they question the values of the schools they thought they knew. And I think they're maybe coming to the realization that at universities, diversity, equity, and inclusion have been used like decor, like as a sweet treat. But at the end of the day, to keep functioning, they don't need them there. Even over at Northwestern, I asked one student, I'm like, okay, hundreds of jobs of researchers, and even many of these research programs, it's kind of a misnomer because it's not just research that happens within these confined walls. They're usually services that are given to the community. All these things are put in doubt when the funding is halted. Do you think maybe Northwestern was put in an uncomfortable position it couldn't escape? And they say, I'm not saying they weren't in an uncomfortable position, but it still feels bad to know that they're cool with marginalized students and scholarship taking the brunt so that the rest of the university can function. And it's not the only thing they could have done. I mean, there were a ton of schools who have outside of Illinois that have done this. Columbia did this. Brown did this. University of Virginia. But Harvard was the only outlier that decided to battle it out in court and to countersue the Trump administration. And you know what? They received all their funding back. There was a ruling. The judge said, hey, I think the Trump administration is using anti-Semitism as a smokescreen to attack the university. Harvard is like no harm, no foul. Northwestern did not choose to fight the righteous fight. And for the UI system, there was no direct pressure. They just kind of saw everybody else caving, in my opinion. And they said, well, we might as well jump into it just in case. They said that the current political context we live in has made DEI work too risky, but there weren't any specific pressures that were coming in, like the $790 million of halted funding at Northwestern.
I think it's super notable what you said about this being an in-state school. I mean, I went to U of I in Champaign, and a big reason I chose it was because it was in-state tuition, and it costs an arm and a leg to go to college today, but at least if you're in-state and you're going to the UI system, you will have relatively more affordable tuition than if you went out of state or went to a Northwestern or something like that. And you're just trying to keep your costs low, and then you're confronting a school that is no longer potentially what you thought it would be. And that's it just kind of is devastating for college affordability. If that's
bro, I already paid these application fees. What you mean?
Yeah.
I went to Northwestern. I came here in 2016 for it, and coming from a working class town, mostly Black and Puerto Rican people on the East Coast, being at Northwestern, most of the kids are white. Most kids have a lot of money. Super jarring. But one thing that made me feel okay, this is going to be an okay place for me, is the way that they kind of propped up the history of Black activism on campus. They say we have this Black house, which is literally just a social space just for Black students. The idea of coming onto campus and then realizing, though, it's not what I imagined, and there is no support for me, and my university doesn't support for me. That sounds like a mental chaos.
Rima, back to you. Over the last, what has it been now? Year plus, Chicago has been wondering who will be the permanent head of Chicago Public Schools. This is one of a couple major vacancies across the city. Where are we? Because the last time we talked, there were seemingly a couple of finalists, but then they were like, no, we got to go back to the drawing board. And so where are we now?
Yeah. So the latest is they're on this sort of, I think about it as part 2, the CEO search, the sequel. I'll probably get in trouble for that, but it's the truth. They reopened applications in November after everything sort of names were leaked. We and the WBEZ and Sun Times reported finalist names, and after that, things kind of from the outside appeared to fall apart. But board members will tell you, no, we just kind of went back to the drawing board. Interviewed more people. And so now they are at the point where they have a group of CEO candidates that they have been interviewing. And, what I've been told and what we reported was that they are very close to choosing finalists. The board did have sort of a routine public planning meeting that they have every month on Wednesday. And during that Wednesday meeting, they had a closed session, and I, believe that they were going to continue talking about candidates, and it's possible that they've whittled them down to finalists at this point. And so what happens now is if they do have finalists at this point, what they'll do is do another round of interviews, but they also plan to have a community panel interview these folks, which means the community panel is also I don't believe the board is going to release names of people who are on this panel, but last I knew it was 15 people. It was supposed to include educators, students, other community members who have a stake in Chicago Public Schools. And those folks would interview the candidates. And then the mayor is also expected to interview the finalist candidates.
Do you have any sense of who those people are right now?
I do not. What I do know is that as of last week, when we last reported about this, a board member told us that was a little cryptic about it. She said that one of the candidates, rather, that they're still interviewing is one of the finalists from a few months ago whose name was leaked. And I said, can you say who that is? And she said, no, I can't say who that is. So there were two names. There was Misha Porter from New York City, former schools chancellor in New York City, longtime educator, administrator there. And then Alex Marrero, who's the current Denver superintendent. Now, these were the two names that were leaked in November. Alex Marrero, since then, has said he's committed to Denver. He's not interested in being the CEO here. And last week, his office confirmed that he is, in fact, not a candidate. So that leaves Misha Porter. I did reach out to her, and I didn't hear back. And, of course, the board office did not confirm. But that would be my best educated guess that she is one of the candidates. But it's hard to know.
And I asked you the same question some months ago, but there has been a person doing this job for a while now. Current interim CEO Macklin King. Have we heard from King? Are they interested in this job? Have they been brought back into the sequel? What's going on?
So Macklin King did apply during the first round of the CEO search. She put her name in the hat and interviewed with the board. And then the Sun-Times reported in the fall that she did not advance to the finalist round, which made the West Side branch of the NAACP pretty angry. They said that she should be given a chance. She's literally doing the job right now. She got the district through a very tough budget season. But alas, I can't say for sure who is a candidate and who isn't, but there's a group of board members, notably board members who voted against hiring King when she took the interim job last year, who have now said that they have lost trust in the CEO search process and they want to keep Dr. King on through school board elections this year and through January of next year, so that there's stability and so that the next elected board can just choose their leader on their own.
What is the likelihood that this sort of drags out past this school year into the new school year, well into 2027? When we will have our first fully elected school board.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Pray for me. All 21 seats are up for election. The board president has said, we will have a CEO by, before the start of next school year. But given what happened in the fall, if they come up with finalists and let's say the community panel doesn't like them or board members decide, wait, I don't think these are our people, or maybe the mayor has issues with both of them. Who's to say that they won't again do another round of interviews? What I will say is, while there are several board members who have expressed interest in keeping interim CEO Macklin King on through next January, I haven't seen a critical mass of board members support that. So I'm not sure that is really the direction that most board members are interested in going in.
Back over to you, Devin Marshall. This week, the Chicago Reader's Best of 2025 officially was unveiled. And first, let me say again, thank you all. Every single person who voted. CityCast Chicago is the best podcast in the city for the checks notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th time in a row. Wow. Y'all really love us. Y'all really appreciate it. That means so much to validate this work that we've been doing. Thank you so much. Devin Marshall, I know you wrote about a few of the winners in this year's celebration.
Yeah, well, first off, congratulations. Over 40,000 people voted in this year, and over 500,000 individual votes were casted. I love going into shops and looking at buses and seeing Best of Chicago for the different businesses that are just so proud because BOC is our love letter to the city. There's two parts to BOC. First, there's the reader poll, which is what I just named. All the votes, that's the reader. The reader decides all the good stuff. It's all in the paper. And then we also have the editorial picks. And those are things that staff and freelancers are like, these are what we think is best in the city. And we make like these really esoteric names. Like, for example, I said, best new club for queer and trans people getting started with strength training. Above the Bars Trans Barbell Club in Bucktown by Alex Martinez. So we make these silly, more specific ones, and that's our way of saying, like, regardless, we love this spot, and you gotta check this out too. I think Best of Chicago for me is a great way to emulate how I see my journalism as not only a community service, but as a reflection of my community. I spend a lot of time here. I'm a musician in the city. I'm someone that I love strength training. And so I'm a trans guy strength training. Best new club for queer and trans people getting started with strength training. Boom. You guys are going to know about it. In the past 2 years, I got sober. I'm a sober guy. I was like, what should I write about? Boom. Best sober focused music series, Nothing Assumed at Empty Bottle, which is run by Matt C., one of the co-owners. So I think putting in the things that we love, the writers, we're the city.
100%. And between lists like Best of Chicago, Best of the South Side from the folks over at Southside Weekly, I just appreciate any opportunity to see Chicago through someone else's eyes. What matters to other people in this city, it is the greatest gift that this podcast has given me. I was so in love with, focused, and centered on my version of Chicago, and it's one that I still nurture, but this opportunity to sort of blow that up and to constantly be put in contact with other people's best of in this city, other people's stories, other people's places of like familiarity and nostalgia is truly a gift. And so I am grateful. And also, this is the best curated list for me to figure out, who's a new artist I need to check out? What's a new coffee shop I need to pull up on? Who's a good photographer I need to be paying attention to? An opportunity to learn something new in this city. Again, it's given to me every day, and these lists sort of carry that forward. And so I appreciate all of the work the entire staff did on this. Every single person who voted, every single person who was nominated, and then every person who won or was a runner-up. Congratulations to you. And again, shout out to the entire CityCast Chicago team. We can't close out an episode of CityCast Chicago without some good news. Every episode, we like to bring you an event, a funny story, something we were reading this week that just brought us a little bit of joy. Rima, what's your good news for us today?
My good news is very personal. It is that I will be babysitting my brother's 4-year-old, 5-year-old dog for the next 3 weeks as he travels internationally. And I am very nervous. And because this involves getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning every day. What the hell? He's like 55 pounds. I have like less than a 700 square foot apartment. But he has his little spot. We tested it out last week and it was nice. I live alone, so I'm excited to have a roommate, and it should be fun, and it should be a crash course in being responsible for another human being, but for another being. So we'll see how that goes.
Is this going to be a make or break on your own decision into pet ownership, or are you someone who's like, like a good aunt who's like, hey, I can come see the kids for a little bit, pick them up, take them out, and then I drop them off?
I'm the good aunt.
Got it.
Yeah,
Got it.
wait until they're old enough to take them to the museum, get them sugared up, and then send them home.
That's
nice.
exactly me. That's exactly me. I'm gonna take my nieces to MSI. I'm like, yeah, y'all finally old enough where y'all don't gotta use the bathroom every 45 minutes. You know, we can just chill out and y'all can understand some of Uncle Kobe jokes. And so we all good. But no, I love that for you. I hope that 3 weeks goes about as smoothly as you're expecting. And there aren't too many surprises.
Yes, me too. And speaking of best of, if the weather it radically improves over the next 3 weeks, I want to go to like some dog friendly spots around the city, take the dog for a nice long walk. So yeah, we'll see.
Devin Marshall, over to you. What is your good news for us today?
So tonight, my band, DMB The Etymology, we're playing Uncommon Ground.
Hell yeah.
We almost sold out. I think we have 5 tickets left if they're around when you get online. But super excited to be joined on the bill by The Epiphany, Yeme. I would describe my band sound like groovy and explosive indie rock. We just put out
Come on, same reaction.
we just put out a project, a debut album in January called More Care to Stay. If you can't make the gig, go stream, go listen to my music. Go listen to some of that. We managed to pack Shubas for our album release on the same night that the Chicago Bears lost their opportunity to go to the Super Bowl. And listen, I didn't do it. But
I like the sense that it was like y'all could have been doing something a little more, a little less heartbreaking,
joyful,
right?
Listen,
But
it was funny because one of the bands, they brought a 40-inch TV into the green room, and in between sets we would go and we would watch, and we were
almost.
But I'm trying to spoon feed everybody this album this year. So More Care to Stay, DMB The Etymology, go check it out.
Good shit. We're gonna drop links in the show notes, and full dinner service is available during the show, and seating starts about 30 minutes before the start. Again, I will drop a link for you in the show notes. Shout out to DMB and The Etymology. I'm going to close this out with some good news. I love a good yard sale, and there are 2 going down this weekend, including the Chicago Printmakers Collaborative and Lincoln Square. They're going to have art supplies, frames, household items, and more. That starts today and runs through tomorrow. And then Miyagi Records in Washington Park is hosting their very first annual yard sale Saturday and Sunday from 12 to 4. You're going to find thousands of records, LPs, 12s, 45s, CDs, tapes, VHS, DVDs, audio gear, and everything is priced to go 50 cents to the $2 hollers all the way up to name your price on audio gear. I will drop links in the show notes for you. Really want to give a shout out to Miyagi Records. They haven't been open that long, but their store has been broken in a few times, forcing the owners to, replace windows, replace stock, and they still here rocking for the community. And so much love to Printmakers Collaborative and Miyagi Records. I also want to give a huge amount of love to our guest today. Seriously, this podcast does not make it 5 years without great people like y'all agreeing to come on, share your stories with us. From the Chicago Reader, Devin Marshall Brown, good to see you again.
Good to be here.
And from Chalk Beach, Chicago, Rima Amin, we appreciate you.
Thank you. Always a good time.
Before we get out of here, I want to give a huge thank you to every single person who is still listening to this episode. I appreciate you for making time for the podcast. Again, if you voted for CityCast Chicago Best Podcast as part of the Chicago Readers Best of the Shy, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. 5 years in a row. Again, it means a lot to the entire team over here. That entire team being executive producer Simone Alisea, our producer Michelle Navarro, our newsletter editor Emmy Mack, our social media manager Rick Homuth, post-production by Jesse Weiser. The music we love is from Sam Thousand, All the Kimonos, and Mark Greenberg from the Mayfair Workshop. If you want to show the podcast and newsletter even more love while also getting access to perks like ad-free listening and neighbors-only events, then head over to membership.citycast.fm, where for $10 a month, or go ahead and give us $100 for a year. And again, you'll get access to those perks, and you can make sure that this podcast is supported with a couple of them ducats as well along the way. We're gonna be here bright and early on Monday. Hopefully you will be too. I'll talk to you then. Peace.